Hello and welcome to Group Chat. I am Justin Verrier, and joining me, Rob Mahoney, Big Woz. Some of us have come to this podcast bringing takes, offering them up to the gods being, I guess, me in this instance. Some of us have not. And so this podcast is going to take on a different shape than we thought going into it, but we'll still have the Western Conference All-Star pick, so yay for that.
You're dramatically overstating what it is that happened.
Dramatic? No.
Justin,
do you want to tell the listeners?
I do. Justin wanted to introduce a new competitive format that a segment that we could add to this podcast. I'm all for it. There was some miscommunication yesterday as Woz and I kind of lobbied to delay it by 1 week. I thought that's what we were doing because that's what we agreed upon.
We wanted to do a take-off in no small part in order to get you guys a little bit out of perhaps your comfort zone, I would say, with some of the maybe conventional wisdom that could be offered on the pod from time to time. And so the one rule, just bring a take, no conventional wisdom, think outside the box, like join me on this psychedelic journey that I'm on. And Woz came prepared. Rob did not.
Again,
it's a shame.
We literally said we weren't doing it today, so I don't know what to tell you.
We never
really said that. Me and Rob
I'm checking the transcript.
Agreed that we should keep it going the other way. And then Justin vociferously disagreed that we should delay it. But, in defense of Rob, to be honest, I've been like this my entire life. And people who know me know this about me. Like, if you ask me to do something, I will always say yes. You might want it done in 1 day. I might have it in my head that it should be done in 3 days. If you start bitching, I'll get it done in a day and a half, okay? That's just generally who I've been my entire life. And this takes thing was kind of the same thing. It's like, could we do it next week?
Right.
And Justin's like, no, we need it tomorrow. And I was like, all right, I'll have it ready by tomorrow.
You rose to the occasion. Yeah.
I'm going to release the chat log to the public, and I'm going to ask our listeners to vote on what they think happened here, if we were supposed to do this or not. Because as I'm reading it, Woz is asking, as you said, to kick the can a little bit, delay this until next week. Justin says, quote, sure, whatever.
But you can read between the line there.
I can, but you said sure.
I read it in Justin's voice, and I was like, Justin's annoyed.
Oh, I knew he was annoyed. I just thought he was saying sure, whatever.
Although, in Rob's defense, when Woz replied back, "Forgive us, Dad," I did give the laughing, crying emoji, and so perhaps you thought that was like the end of it. That I waved my hands at it?
I did. And I was very thankful for Woz in that moment because, Justin, I would say you're the king of the, is this guy pissed at me in response to every message I sent him? It's just really your lane. It's where you excel, and I have no choice but to doff the cap.
That's his entire vibe, bro. Is this guy really just pissed right now? That's his entire thing.
I have many years as an editor. I know how to wage the psychological warfare via Slack message.
You really do.
I'm reminded of Justin's legendary Core Week presentation up there, where he gave a great presentation, but acted like he was too good for it the entire time.
Yep.
I actually don't know this.
When
I was giving it, I think I was more just nervous because I don't like talking in front of people.
Yeah, I don't think that's what the audience was like. This is good information, but this guy is above this stupid exercise.
Well, that's just my general vibe. That's my whole oeuvre, I guess. Unfortunately, but I can't do anything but my face. It's like the male equivalent of resting bitch face. It's just, I guess, being a bitch.
Yeah,
at a certain point.
But you could do something about your whole personality. That's really something that's more malleable.
I am what I am. And that's why we have such a brilliant, well-outlined podcast on a day-to-day basis.
It's true.
I think it's working out for us.
I think so, too. I don't know why you tried to mess with the formula by getting Woz and I to create content when clearly this is your calling.
He said
I guess
work, yeah.
Do work for you guys, yes. There There you go. Well, we'll all participate in today's segment, just the one segment, unfortunately, but it is a pretty robust segment because we're going to get into the Western Conference All-Star picks. We'll do West this week. We're off on Monday for Martin Luther King Day. We'll be back next Thursday with the Eastern Conference picks, and I think a take off.
Yeah.
Rob, take
Absolutely.
off. Okay.
That's what we
Take
agreed upon.
What's going to happen now is there's going to be like a trade, and we won't be able to do either of the segments that we've said
Getting
we will.
the
But
takeoff in no matter what, because my
I think it's a
takeoff
good idea.
is evergreen
Definitely.
and everlasting. So
Oh.
I'm ready.
I like that
Need
tease.
more duels, you know?
Me and Waz pistols at dawn. Let's go.
Let's do it. Yeah, so West picks, we're going to go through starters, reserves. Just to remind everyone, because I have to be reminded regularly, we're back to East-West as the format in terms of picking the All-Stars, which was always the case.
Yeah. In terms of the
Yeah,
selections, that was the case.
That was always the case, and then they drafted them. And now this year, we're going into a new format where 4 teams are dueling. One of those teams, I believe, gets catapulted in from the Rising Stars game or the G League team.
I think it's a composite of the two.
Great. We're just doing a lot of stuff yet again. I can't imagine people will be interested, but I guess we'll find out. I find this exercise, though, to be important. I think All-NBA, super important. This just like, I don't know, it just like really gives you a snapshot of the league in a way that I think
agree.
is important and easy to overlook. But like, this is the stuff. Like, this is what we are all doing all the time in order to just like say, these are the guys that are deciding the fate of the league.
And this is an official stamp. And most importantly, this is something that the players absolutely give a damn about. If they don't give a damn about the game itself, the validation of being selected that shows that you are one of the top people in the league, that, your whole life you've been dreaming about this. You remember watching Kobe. You remember watching LeBron. You remember watching, all of our great stars from yesteryear playing in the All-Star game. It's a rite of passage. And so, yeah, it's still really, really important. Even if the past few years, the actual game itself hasn't felt that way. Being selected, being part of the crew that, goes about selling the league to the sponsors, basically, all damn weekend. And being chosen as like, you guys are the ambassadors, you guys are the torchbearers of this league that's been around for 75 plus years now. And all the legacy and the history that comes with that. So, yeah, I agree with Justin. This is major, major stuff.
I think a huge part of it, too, is the selection for the team is just more competitive than the actual game. And so the inner competitor in these guys, if they do get left off the team, are like, what the fuck? You picked that guy instead of me? You valued his accomplishments over mine?
Yes.
Like, that's where you get some of the actual juice. And you're right, like, we've seen guys be really, really miffed when they've been left off a team for any number of reasons. When they actually show up, it's kind of who cares at this point, and we're all waiting for the All-Star game to be saved. But the process of distinguishing the class of the league, totally agree, is an important one and is important to these guys too.
I'm curious how you guys approach this, though, in contrast to All-NBA, because I found myself, as I was going through the exercise, caring more about team representation than I typically would with All-NBA, which I feel like is top 15 players in the league. Doesn't matter who has like one player versus two, like the Cavs deserve to because they're this. It's all about who is the best player. This time, I'm a little bit more squishy when it comes to like Rockets are the second best team in the West. Like, we're not going to put somebody in there, and so
They
did
don't
you guys
have
think about that
somebody.
at all?
Well,
Okay.
don't tip the cap.
Okay, we'll get to it. Yeah.
I do think that's a worthy debate. And for me, one of the other distinguishing factors, in addition to like, does a team deserve a representative, which is always a conversation we have around All-Star time. As we've gotten sort of a codified rule about games played for all the major awards and All-NBA, I find myself caring a little less about that for All-Star. Like, you need to meet a certain threshold. And obviously, if you have a great body of work and have been largely healthy this season, maybe you get a tiebreaker, maybe you get a sort of an edge. But I'm going to be honest, like, it's not the most important thing to me, so long as you've been really, really good. And I think that'll reflect in my ballot, certainly in one spot.
Okay, so obviously 5 starters, 2 backcourt, 3 frontcourt, and then in the bench, 2 more backcourt, 3 more frontcourt spots, and then 2 wild card at the end. Let's start with the backcourt starters. I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and I have Anthony Edwards. Who do you guys
Interesting.
have?
I got Shea and Steph.
Okay.
I got Shea and Steph. Yeah.
Okay.
What's the Ant case?
He plays every single game practically. Yeah. I have dinged Steph this year, both in our top 100 and now in this All-Star exercise, because he isn't really playing back-to-backs at this point. And it's a small thing, but it's a noticeable thing when you're trying to like dictate who are like the absolute best players. It's a small margin of error pretty much in order to decide these sorts of things. And I also feel like Ant gets saddled with the fact that he isn't the number one MVP best player in the league. But in terms of like an Ant season, I think he's been pretty rock solid. He's been pretty great. He's definitely a top 10 player in the league. Also, his three-point shooting development this year has been miraculous. He's literally the best three-point pull-up shooter in the league. That's even better than Steph Curry at this point. He had 190 three-point makes all of last year. In 79 games, he already has 167 in basically half amount of time. So it's like he's progressing even from the model he was last year. And so if anything, I actually think he just gets dinged from the fact that like the expectations are so high. I think he's been great.
I agree. Ant was definitely he was the sixth man, if you will, of my starters. However, you guys know my policy by now. We've been doing this for years. If you're pretty close to a guy who's a legend, I'm picking the legend every time. Sorry, get to the back of the bus. Steph Curry is the NBA All-Star game personified as far as I'm concerned. And Ant just hasn't been that much better than him in order to take his spot. And, I will note, like, there's a couple of people in my life, daily fantasy players that do a lot of complaining about Steph. It's like, man, Steph has a couple of stinkers every now and again. Nobody talks about this. It's like, well, because Steph Curry's Teflon. Sorry. And when it comes to his All-Star case, he's Teflon for me too. Like he's still having a whale of a year, man, to be 35, 36 years old and carrying Golden State's offense with absolutely zero help the way that he is right now. Like it's got to be Steph Curry for me.
I would say two things about that. One, as far as two stars of teams with pretty comparable records, it's not even close which one has the superior supporting cast and more help and more structure around them. And Ant is the driver of Minnesota's offense. Like, I don't want to take anything away from him. But there's a reason, why Steph can have a game that for a daily fantasy sports player might ring as bad, like 13 points in a game, and the Warriors win because of all of the action he generates. Like, Ant very much is a guy where the box score will more or less tell you what he's contributing on offense. The defense can be a different story. Steph is just a dramatically different kind of player, and he has dragged a team to 500 that has no business being 500. Like, there's probably a larger conversation to be had about what Steph is now saying about that, and kind of puffing his chest out and telling people to stop making fake trades about the Warriors, which I respect the competitive spirit.
I respect the leverage, sort of talking in the press, negotiating in the press that him and Draymond did the other day.
They're doing their part. But like he said that after a game where Guy Santos started. So my guy, you need more help.
So Waz, you thought that was an attempt to manipulate the situation a little bit publicly?
100%. Like, if you know anything about Draymond and stuff, these guys are insanely competitive people. The idea that they don't want better teammates in order to win bigger is insane. Like, we know these guys are maniacs when it comes to how competitive they are and how badly they want to put a competitive product on the floor. So for both of them to be singing the same tune, which, conveniently helps the Warriors in terms of their negotiation position with the teams that they're trying to, get better players from, like, I'm not stupid.
Yeah, they made a big show earlier in the season about putting Kuminga in the starting lineup, and then Draymond was going to bow out. That lasted like a couple days, maybe even a couple hours.
I feel like they've done more or less that exact thing like 3 times.
Yeah, and the fact that they all had the same story, like the same verbiage that they were all using was quite curious here. I just assumed like maybe there was like some sort of backdoor deal where it's like you're gonna get the Dirk treatment like down the road. Like obviously Steph was always probably gonna get that. Kerr seems like he's practically year to year at this point, or when he's gonna ride off into the sunset. But I was like, oh, Draymond is more than anyone else probably is the most susceptible because you look at what just happened to Clay. Like there's a possibility if he just doesn't show up next year, like they get his ass out of there and he's the contract ballast in order to make something work. I just thought that like maybe they just like satisfied them and in the back rooms, like where it was like, we got a cushy little job for you as a scout after this is all done. You just make this a nice little transition here.
I don't think any of it's quite that explicit when you're talking about some of the best players in the history of the franchise. Steph was, I would think, probably always going to be taken care of, although with the way Joe Lacob conceptualizes the organization and envisions himself as the visionary of it, maybe not. Crazier things have happened than someone like Steph getting kind of pushed out the door, thrown to the wind at some point late in their career. Draymond's case is different. And maybe this is a touch of self-awareness from a guy who has not exhibited a lot of it throughout his career to say, yeah, if there is a trade, he could very well be a part of it. If there is a change in the tide or the wind of this team, he could be out the door in just the way you're describing, Justin. But also, yeah, it's good negotiation tactics. It also suits the kind of bluster that Draymond likes to participate in. And that Steph from time to time likes to participate in. As like, we can beat anybody, let us figure it out. Like it fits into their usual talking points in such a convenient way. Why not try it?
Also with Draymond especially, he likes when people knows how smart he is about everything basketball related. So,
well, don't we all, Waz? Says three guys talking on a podcast.
For sure. I'm as guilty as anybody else. But, like, Draymond wants you to know, like, I'm aware of what the second apron is and, cap implications and why you shouldn't leverage your future and blah, 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 blah. I was reading Zach Cram's Memphis Grizzlies piece where Draymond's like, look, I know every single offense in and out like the back of my hand. What the Grizzlies are doing is different. I've never seen that before. He wants y'all to know, like, I'm a scout, I'm a coach, I'm a GM, I'm all of it. That's part of it too.
The crazy thing is I agree with their assessment.
Yes.
Like all the nerds on podcasts are like, actually, that makes sense. Like, why would you just like throw away all the draft picks and whatever for Zach LaVine, for Jimmy Butler? I am for them needing an upgrade. That's apparent to everyone. But I think one of these mid-level moves isn't going to change a ton. Maybe Zach LaVine gets them into the playoffs, but long term, what they need is another superstar next to Steph. And so if that's not on the table, then don't go make that move.
Clock's ticking.
The clock is ticking. I think they do need to make a move. I think what they would want to do in an ideal world, if you guys remember LeBron's first year returning to the Cavs where it was just misery, and then they did the Timo Mozgov, and they brought in Iman Shumpert, and they brought in J.R. Smith, and then, like, changed the team completely. I don't think those kinds of deals do that anymore. I don't think, like, getting a bunch of ancillary guys, even if they're plugging holes, are going to make...
Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson and DeAnthony Melton. Yeah.
I don't think they're going to make some crazy difference for this team. So maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it.
I think the counterpoint to that would be the Mavericks last season. Like P.J. Washington, Daniel Gafford, that transformed that team.
Yeah.
And I'm with you that it's a hard process to sort out, because you're right that what they ultimately need is something that they don't have the resources to get right now. And so do you wait long enough till you get another draft pick year over year, you get a little bit more in the door to trade out and to work with? But every year that you try to do that is a year that you're taking off of Steph's now post-prime, right? He is not getting any better. As you said, he's not playing back-to-backs. Like, you're having to ration what Steph Curry is today. And so if you're not going to be able to make the kind of big swing you want to make within the next calendar year, you got to do something. And that's where I think I disagree a little bit. I do see a sense of urgency for the Lakers and the Warriors both. Just as far as, like, you deserve to give Steph Curry a chance to compete with more than this. Like, LeBron deserves to have a chance to compete with more than this. And I think on an organizational level, at some point, it's just a responsibility that you have to accept, that you're going to have to trade some future picks, that you're going to have to swallow something that you don't want to trade for the sake of something that may not even solve all your problems now, but makes things at least slightly better.
I think they'll end up doing both. They'll probably trade for like a Vooch at the deadline just to give him a better shot this season, and then they'll save their big powder for the offseason. Like, I'm not expecting them to wait like 2 to 3 years. I if anything, I think they're just going to kick it to the offseason because it's just easier to make deals in the offseason than in season because everybody's over the second apron at this point. But
yeah.
So I had Steph clearly on my bench. Do you want to just go through the guards at this point?
Let's do it.
Because we're in that range. I have Steph on the bench, and then I also have Luka, who brings up the question of how many games is too few, because Luka has played 22. There's talk of him maybe coming back before the All-Star break, but probably we're getting around low 20s for him.
What if he doesn't come back before the All-Star break?
I don't.
Question.
Yeah.
Do games played matter to you guys, and how many games is too few? I think is the question.
That's really cutting it close.
Dude?
I think if he wasn't Luka, I would say it's just not enough. And this is the case for someone like, spoiler alert, like I don't have Ja Morant on my list, who I think in addition to missing a lot of games, just hasn't quite been at the level of some of these other stars. So I don't have Ja on my list, but I do have Luka later down as a wild card. I'm Steph and SGA up top. I have Ant and Kyrie as my next two guards. So I think we have a consensus like top 3 between Ant, Steph, and Shea, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my consensus top 3. My 4th guard, non-wild card edition, was De'Aaron Fox.
Really?
Yeah. I had De'Aaron Fox as my 4th guard. And again, like I think he's having probably his best season again. And I think he's deserving. I really do. Obviously, they've had like a mini turnaround since the coach got killed. We won't say, who put the shiv in his back, but
I think you might need to if this is your pick.
De'Aaron Fox might have fingerprints, but there might be other fingerprints on the freaking knife. Who knows?
Also, was he wrong? Turns out like he might have been right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
no judgment.
If the message was just not resonating with the guys anymore and people felt like there were better ways to do things, then, he might have had the right idea. And, yeah, De'Aaron Fox was my 4th guard. But Kyrie, again, I don't know, are we getting into our wild card picks? But, like, Kyrie was right in the mix, too, just because of the burden he shouldered. And, like, with some of these other guys, man, like, nobody really has the usage and efficiency combo that he's bringing to the table, as well as like if you look at some of Kyrie's impact metrics, it's kind of shocking how good his like impact metrics are. Like, and Kyrie, I feel like throughout his career, those numbers never really liked Kyrie that much. But this year, it's like no, like he's having a major impact on the floor, and Kyrie was right there, but I did pick De'Aaron Fox, but Kyrie's on my team too.
I think there's a reason the numbers didn't always, like in terms of some of the on-off splits and some of the more advanced measures, didn't always favor Kyrie in that way. And it's frankly because he was a different kind of player. He was so much more a little bit come and go, a little bit more curial, not just in terms of what he's doing off the court, but his style on the court. I think he's become just absolutely rock steady for the Mavs in a way that makes his like bulging disc situation right now that much more of a bummer, because we'll have to see kind of what he's capable of and how he manages that over the course of the year. But the all-around scoring, the kind of like functional calm that he brings to that group, the sense of the moment, the defensive effort, which is not something he's always brought to the table in his career, I think have been really, really sensational, to the point that he needs to be an all-star to me. He has to be included in here in some form or fashion. The Mavs have won 61% of their games with him in the lineup, and that's including some of this skid without Luka too. I just think he has brought so much to that team, specifically in the way that they've needed, and the Luka conversation gets a little more complicated because of the games played, and that's where your mileage may vary, but I think Kyrie has a really strong case.
I didn't have him on my team. I hear all those points. I also love like how he's been able to vacillate between being the guy when Luka is out versus just like playing a complimentary role. He's just gotten even better at that, and the efficiency has risen as a result of that the past 2 seasons. Just like games played, and ultimately this comes down to a representation thing for me. Again, like the
You're
Mavs
such an electoral
right
college guy.
I guess so.
So I don't have Luka on my team because I don't think he's going to play more than 22 games by the break.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Like
I get
22 is like, damn.
This has been a poor Luka season. I mean, he's
well,
yeah, even
by his standards, not
by
his best.
Own insane
that's what I mean.
standards.
But guess what? He's still Luka Doncic.
Exactly.
And this is where, like, whether you want to put him as a guard or a wild card potentially, for me, I had him as more of a wild card because of the games played. But then I ran into, I'm comparing Luka against guys who are second and third options on their teams. And he's just, the gap is so wide at that point when you get to that level of the All-Star team that it felt silly to me to leave him off. But everyone has their different thresholds for the games played stuff. And as I was saying, for me, because All-NBA is baked in now, I kind of want to give a little more leeway to All-Star.
And am I reading this right that you guys both have guards as your wild card spots?
Yes.
I have a big as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
I
maybe we
didn't
save
even
the wild card.
consider a big for my wild card spot.
Backcourt bias is off the charts.
I didn't even
Unacceptable.
Yeah. If anything,
consider 'em.
my first two out are guards, but maybe
Really?
we could circle back to it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Starting front court. Nikola Jokic playing pretty well these days.
Yeah.
Victor Wembanyama,
Yep.
Kevin Durant.
Yep, same chalk.
So this was the first, I would say, like, big decision point for me in the front court was AD or KD
Yes.
for the last front court spot. I went AD, leaning a little bit towards the defense, obviously, but also just the stability that he's been able to give the Lakers this season has been really important. So again, it's another case where whether you want to go Ant or Steph in the backcourt or AD or KD in the front court, all perfectly worthy choices. I lean AD a little bit here.
Yeah, I leaned KD just because the utter lack of, oomph that's been provided from his co-stars. Devin Booker, one of my favorite players in the league, he's just had a bad year by Devin Booker standards specifically. And so to me, KD has just been so like number one with the bullet on that team. And so, yeah, I put him over AD, and it's like, the rest of my front court guys, it seemed pretty obvious, and I didn't have too much trepidation between starter and bench guys. So, yeah, I went KD.
Yeah, talk about essential personnel, like with Steph and some of these other guys. The Suns are worse than the Blazers, perhaps, if they don't have Kevin Durant in that lineup. I think they're 1-9 without
That's
Kevin
insane.
Durant playing this year. And that's
Not
with Booker, that's with Beal coming off the benches, whatever version they want to put out there. He's an efficiency monster, and then he's like also busting his ass over the past 5 years now defensively. Like he is their best big man. And now the drop off between him and everybody else is significant, but still, like, he is legitimately a big man despite like all the likeness, despite the fact that he is his age. It's incredible, the fact that he's been able to be this efficient, be as much of an offensive weapon that he is, even as he gets later into his career. But they do have a center coming via trade, finally. They swapped a couple seconds for Nick Richards in a second. Rob, what do you think about that trade over?
Shout out to Josh Okogie, future Charlotte Hornet.
We'll see how long. Non-guaranteed on the second year, but
That's true.
He's getting paid nonetheless. What do you think about Richards in that deal?
I like it. I think there's kind of two big questions you have to ask with a deal like this. One, does this actually move the needle in a meaningful way? Probably not. It would be my answer. The second question is it worth the opportunity cost of the 3 second-round picks? Because Phoenix does not have a lot of draft assets at its disposal. So they have to choose their spots very, very carefully. I think this is probably enough of a positive roll of the dice to try it. And the options at center are so limited given what they can do with the second apron that Nick Richards is actually one of the better choices available. So I both think they should have done it, and I'm glad for the Suns' sake that they did, but also I don't think it's going to change their fate in a hugely meaningful way.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes going from below average to average can be a meaningful improvement, especially when you consider the position. Obviously centers get de-emphasized on offense a lot, but defensively, this stuff matters, man. And if this guy can give them, average to even slightly above average defensive play at that 5 position, then it's a huge deal. Just think about the stretch the Thunder had when, they didn't have Hartenstein or Chet. It was Jesus Christ, man. And obviously Hartenstein is above average defender, but it made such a difference for a team that we already considered to be top of the top at defense, right? And so I think this will be, maybe not that pronounced, but I think it will have a profound impact. And maybe it doesn't show up in terms of, they rip off 10 out of 12 wins in a row, but they're just going to be meaningfully better by not playing zeros and negatives 48 minutes a game at center. Like, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, I do wonder what the impact of having a rotation caliber center on the roster playing minutes will do, because they just need a stabilizer at this point. They just need someone who won't fuck everything up, because they're currently starting Mason Plumlee, who after this might not even get minutes. I think they might just go Richard Iguodaro at this point and just play a little bit smaller. And they should, yes. And so, I think Richards is fine. I think he's a totally solid, young, athletic, big, strong guy who will do a little bit of everything. I don't think he's great at anything in particular. He's if you were to look at league average in the textbook, it would be Nick Richards, because he's just a solid center.
I would say he does one thing at a pretty high level, which is rebound the ever-living hell out of the ball. And the Suns are a terrible rebounding team. The bigs that they've had, Iguodaro is a great example. Pretty good, switchable, active big, who I think has a real future in the league, and I'm excited to see what the Suns can do with him long term. But not the biggest body and not the biggest rebounder. And certainly Yusuf Nurkic, when he was playing, not a plus rebounder. Mason Plumlee at this stage, too limited to be a meaningful rebounding presence. He'll get some of his own just because of how big he is, but not an active presence on the boards. And I think Nick Richards, especially with how small the Suns play, the rebounding is a big deal. That is something that can actually prop them up in a meaningful way. And so, if you're getting kind of league average contributions from him in other areas, and you're getting an actual boon to the rebounding game, that is a solidifying element that the Suns really need. The question is, does it take them up a tier? Does it take them into a different class of competition? I think it'll make their lives all much better. I think Kevin Durant is going to have some easier nights ahead of him as a result of stuff like this. But I don't know that it's making the Suns threaten for anything they weren't really threatening for.
I think at this point, they're just trying to get out of the danger zone.
Fair.
They're right now the 11th best team in the Western Conference. And so I think they're just trying to make it into the play-in to save face. And that's honestly what I think they're doing to Jimmy as well. Just come give us something to care about, so Kevin Durant doesn't motion toward the door. Just so Devin Booker doesn't throw up his hands and it's why the fuck am I doing everything that nobody wants to do on this team? So, we'll see.
Tough cookies over there.
One more thing on the Kevin Durant front as we kind of laud him in his case for All-Star. He's averaging 27 a game this season. Great. Wonderful. For Kevin Durant, that is barely in the top 10 of scoring seasons that he's had. And for context, Kawhi Leonard has done that one time, right? There's elite Hall of Fame level players who never average 27 a game. And this is just he rolls out and does this. He is still the absolute best in class at what he does, which is hit mid-rangers over people, create shots that no one else can create, and convert at basically the highest levels of efficiency that a scorer reasonably can given his volume.
Do you have Kawhi Leonard on your ballot?
I do not. He just didn't quite make it this year.
Okay. So Waz and I obviously have AD in the front court on the bench. Mm-hmm. So here's where it gets dicey. I have Jalen Williams. I assume you guys do too.
I do not.
No. I thought I would. I thought I would, but then I looked and he just does way less than the guys he's competing against.
It's true.
Way less.
Okay, so you don't even have him at wildcard spots.
No.
I don't.
He's a forward? Jalen Williams is a forward?
He's a forward.
Okay. Yeah, and so at this they're so far and away the best team in the Western Conference.
That's
nice.
True.
It's true.
I got to give him two. And this guy, I know the numbers are down a little bit, the efficiency down a little bit as he's getting more and more to do. I've knocked him a few times on this podcast, basically saying the fact that he isn't more of an offensive threat is kind of the next level that the Thunder need to get to. He fucking played center for a month.
Yeah.
It's just he's so essential to their entire identity. It's it's hard to extricate what he does with what the success of the team pretty much. And so I have him there. And if anything, I had him as my next spot, and then I gave the next spot to Alperen Şengün.
Yeah.
Another nod to the standings because I don't love it. I'll be honest. How do we not have a Rocket as an all-star? This team has been incredible.
No, because that's just not how the team operates.
How does the team operate?
I mean, like, yo, to be honest, like, Fred VanVleet probably has as much ownership of that offense as Alperen Şengün.
No.
I'm not saying Fred VanVleet's an all-star. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, Alperen Şengün?
Look, Fred VanVleet is hugely important to the Rockets in terms of the way that they execute, the way they get into their stuff. Like, there isn't really a replacement for him on that roster. So yeah, he's important. Alperen Şengün produces like a star, is of structural importance to everything they do successfully on offense, and I think has acquitted himself actually quite well to being more of a rover on defense this season. He's not a great stopper, but he is a participant in an elite level defense. That's where, for me, Şengün is a little bit more in wild card territory. I didn't have him in one of my front court spots, and it came down for me between J-Dub and Şengün. And I'm looking at the secondary, a killer secondary creator on maybe the best team in basketball, or a guy that is the structure of the Rockets, a team that has been amazing this season, has won as many games as they have, has been elite in the Western Conference basically all year. I just didn't have it in me to shirk a dude who is that critical to a 27-12 team. And I don't see that as a representation issue. I see it as an issue of structural importance.
Yeah, nah. That dude's not on my all-star team.
Nope.
But J-Dub is also not on your all-star team, Was.
Who?
J-Dub.
No, J-Dub is the person that, like, I most strongly consider, especially in my wildcard. But I don't know why I was thinking of him as a guard, because he handles the rock so much. But I guess he is a forward in size.
Yeah,
he's a wing.
Who he guards positionally. I had Triple J and LeBron James.
Same.
Those are my two front court guys, along with AD. Like, again, Şengün, like, I get it, especially on offense. What he's doing is so important. Structurally, between him and VanVleet, like, these guys, like, literally would not have an offensive structure without these guys. I just don't think he's that level of impact player all around as Triple J and LeBron James. I just don't see it. And in terms of my wild cards, I definitely went with guards who just have the ball all the freaking time.
Oh, really? I was going to think you were going to try to squeeze Norm Powell in here.
I was going to. We're going to get into it. Norm was literally my last person.
He's been really good. He's been really good.
He's like my last one out. But I definitely considered Norm for wild card over Şengün. For sure. Just like what he's doing.
No.
Yeah, I did, for sure. Just on an efficiency level, it's insane.
He's been great.
You know this dude has a higher usage than Kyrie? Like, he's basically like Devin Booker, like huge offensive burden right now at insane efficiency stats. Like, this is nuts what he's doing in that realm.
He's been an awesome scorer. ... I'm not going to comment on many of the other elements of his game.
You don't really be doing the rest of it.
Has Norm been like holding like private media mixers or something? There's just like this like Norm contingent amongst our media cohort. And I was like, did I miss the party invite?
It's miraculous, though. He's like 31 years old or whatever the hell he is, and he's having the best year of his life. We've never seen somebody do this before. And so I definitely ranked him in. Like, look, you guys have definitely convinced me, like, you know, like Şengün definitely deserves a look, especially, again, the Rockets, I don't think they would have competent offense without him and Fred. I remember the days before Fred got there, and Şengün was literally the only person who understood what a functional offensive basketball was supposed to look like. Like, I understand that. I truly do. It's just, I don't know. Like, it's just spiritually, he just doesn't feel like an all-star this year to me.
So who are the guards you have, Waz, that have the ball in their hands all the time?
Okay, so like I said, Kyrie Irving is my first wild card, and my second wild card. So you guys probably don't listen to this podcast. It's one of ours, the boys at Stadio. It's our soccer podcast. They have this saying that they say when a guy gets called for offsides in a big moment, they say, well, the guy was spiritually onside, even if VAR had him like by a quarter of an inch offside. Like, he was spiritually offside. He wasn't cherry picking. He shouldn't have been called for that. And that's what I feel about Ja Morant. He is spiritually
an all-star.
An all-star, straight up. And you know, I went and dug into the numbers. Like, his numbers just are not there.
No.
In terms of empirically, they just aren't. Like, whatever you want to look at, like, just his efficiency hasn't been there.
He's the least efficient of any guard that I actually considered.
Yes. The impact stuff just isn't there. But I'm sorry, when you watch the Grizzlies, you can't tell me this guy isn't the engine that makes this thing go. And more importantly, he's the most electrifying player in the NBA. Bar none, by far. I don't even think it's close in terms of on a given night who's doing shit that's just like makes my head explode. The way he dunked on Wemby's head for no freaking reason last night. You telling me this guy is not an all-star? Like, I get it. It's just for Ja. Like, there's just a special exemption. And it is called the wild card. And as my last pick for the team, he's at 24 games right now. He should get to 30. Before the All-Star break is here, more than 30, God willing. And so that's why I gave it over Luka. I don't think Luka's going to be back before the All-Star game. And Ja is playing right now. And I just think you just have to watch Memphis, man. And I'm sort of falling in love with Memphis as they're getting Gigi Jackson back and, like, they're actually getting wing defenders back. Like, this team is something to be keeping your eye on going forward. And Ja Morant, to me, man, like, I could not leave this guy off my team. And maybe it's recency bias and all of that stuff. But, like, man, how could Ja Morant not be an all-star?
The vibes case, just
The
off the
vibes
charts.
case. Yes.
It's a great vibes case, though.
I think it comes down to whether or not you want to reward Jackson, who's been integral, but like isn't the superstar of that team, versus Ja, who's just like the most electric NBA player in probably basketball. And so I agree with everything Waz is saying. He only has 2 more games played at this point after playing last night than Luka. And so he practically has the same case as Luka, hasn't been nearly as efficient, hasn't been nearly as productive. But he really is the engine, and he's the player who is going to vault them from being pretty good to great. And so I reward that because Jackson honestly hasn't had a standout season. He's been good by his terms.
You have Ja, but not Jaren?
100%.
What?
the
What is
All-Star game.
happening?
We're not
It's the
rewarding like
All-Star
quality
game.
defense and like 20 points a game here.
And by the way, you guys have talked me into it. Sometimes you gotta abandon your priors. I'm gonna move Şengün up
Oh, okay.
and take Triple J off. He's gonna be the sacrificial lamb.
Wow.
For Ja's.
Okay, I don't
All-Star
like-
case
I don't like
on
that.
My ballot.
I don't like that at all.
Him and Norm are my last people off. I looked at Devin Booker. I just couldn't get there. I just could not get there. Just like when you look at the efficiency, what he's been doing, like defensively, like it's just not there. It's not what we thought Booker was going to do coming off the Olympics. Obviously being one of the best guys in the league, he just hasn't been there for me. So Book, I definitely considered. So yeah, my last 2 wild cards will be Kyrie Irving and Ja Morant.
Okay.
So I've got KD, LeBron, and Jaren for front court, and then Luka and Şengün are my wild cards. So yeah, for me, like the Ja case is very persuasive, and you literally watch him play, and the case is very persuasive. I also think because of the quality of his team, he is allowed to have down games in ways that other players aren't, and that's some of what contributes to the efficiency. Also, I hear everything you're saying, Waz, about how he is the Grizzlies, and what you were saying just about he is the piece that elevates them from quite good to potentially excellent or great or finals caliber or conference finals caliber. The Grizzlies are a winning team without him this season. They would be 5th place in the West based on their winning percentage in games in which he did not play. And the reason for that, if you had to pick one, I would say it's elite defense. If you had to pick one player, I would say it's Jaren Jackson. And it's frankly not just that Jackson is a incredible transformational defender. He's scoring well. He's creating more than he ever has before. Honestly, having the kind of season we have not talked about enough, because I think becoming the kind of big who can punish teams off the dribble has been one of the most meaningful developments in Memphis's entire offense this year. So that's a big deal to me. I think Jaren Jackson is not just worthy of being on this team, but if you're going to pick a Grizzlies representative, I think he's the guy.
Yeah.
Top 5 on defense, but they're not like...
They're top 5 on both sides of the ball, which is crazy.
Sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's not like we have to give the defensive representative the case because they're the Thunder level of defense,
No, but he's been their best offensive player.
I don't agree with that. No, he's been their
You think
steadiest offensive
Jaren
player.
Jackson has been the Grizzlies' best offensive player?
Over the course of the full season, yeah.
Most consistent, I would say.
Some of us value consistency
I
and,
can't get
and
there.
steadiness.
Doesn't get the people going, and John, unfortunately,
It does not. I can't argue with that.
I can't get there with you. And I think Jaren Jackson, definitely on offense, he's made a better case. It's just, and when I was picking these teams, I was reminded of this Stephon Marbury quote. And I can't remember if it was Steve Nash or Jason Kidd. I'm pretty sure it was Steve Nash after having gone to the Suns and they basically turned their whole season around. This is very early on in the Nash and Suns thing. And New York media, being New York media, they're giving Stephon Marbury a lot of guff for how the teams had turned around. And Steph was like, look, here's the thing. You put us both on a basketball court. You rip the name off the back of my jersey. You rip the name off the back of his jersey. You rip the name off the front of both of our jerseys. People watch us play. They're going to say I'm a better player. And that's how I feel about Ja and Triple J. Okay?
That's good.
Guess what? Steph Marbury was wrong. He was extremely wrong.
Do you guys know he's still at every Knicks game?
He's been reintegrated into the fold because it's true. Once a Knick, always a Knick. It's actually fucking true. As corny and stupid as it sounds, it's actually true.
It's like the entire cast of The Sopranos and then Stephon Marbury
Yes.
are just at every fucking game. It's great. My last wild card spots went down to Ja, and then I gave it to LeBron. I know that LeBron isn't going to be there. He's going to be there. There's no case that he will not be at this All-Star game, but I think it actually is probably, if we were to just look at the resumes here for this season, it actually is probably closer than we think. I actually think if we're just stripping the names, Stephon Marbury style, for the great prophet of our time for the All-Star ballot, I do think he and De'Aaron Fox, for instance, or even Kyrie Irving have similar case where it's all offense, and their teams are pretty similar in the standings. Lakers are a little bit better right now. Obviously, LeBron, better playmaker and all the other stuff. So I gave it to LeBron, but I think Fox is actually pretty close if we were just to look at this more empirically.
Fox has been good. I thought he got bumped out a little bit for me based on a couple of things. I mean, one, the Kings have had such a weird season, and in particular, they've been a losing team with him in the lineup. And I know that they're kind of on the verge of that anyway, but it's the kind of thing that makes my ears perk up a little bit. The individual performance is kind of unimpeachable. He's one of the I think he's basically on the edge of top 5 in scoring for the year, which for De'Aaron Fox is phenomenal. A great creator, a great mid-range threat. I love the way De'Aaron Fox plays. I don't know how to warrant his inclusion as for me, he was more of a wild card consideration. For you, it's over LeBron. For me, it's over someone like Şengün or Luka. Those guys are just playing at a different level this season relative to what they were contributing to winning.
Anybody else that you guys considered? I had James Harden as a name that no one
He's
threw
a
out.
consideration.
Unfortunately, shooting percentage-wise,
There was just absolutely no way he was making
awful.
my team. But yes,
but he's
I
organizing
consider
that team in a way
He
that I
is.
think is significant
He is.
for a pretty good
He's the
Clippers team.
point guard of, that competence that I certainly didn't see coming. They just smoked the freaking Nets by 80 last night, which is crazy.
Unbelievable. I've never seen a score like that. I was going to text you guys. It was 38-90 when I looked at the score last night. They ultimately won by I think 67. Unbelievable.
Justin, if you were to pick a Clipper, would you go Harden or would you go Norm?
I would go Harden.
I think I would too.
I think Norm's more efficient. He's the scorer, but things are starting. They're generating from Harden's playmaking.
Yeah,
I think
Norm
the
does
reason-
not have assists.
No, he does not.
He does not rebound you to rock. His
Defense,
defense is on
comes
ball,
and goes.
off ball is, but boy, does he fill it up, man. He will fill it up.
He gets fucking points. I love watching Norm score. I love watching his evolution as a scorer. But again, if you're distilling things down to singular reasons, the Clippers are not a potent offense by any stretch of the imagination, but Harden's passing is the central reason why they can tread water at all. And so if you were going to pick a Clipper, I think it would be him. I think, yeah, Harden's had a super weird season, but relative to what the Clippers have been and what they've asked him to do, is worthy of some note, if not actual honorable mention.
I think also honorable mention, we have to say it, Domantas Sabonis.
Sure.
Who is actually not only leading the league in rebounding, leading the league in 3-point percentage. So your 3-point percentage leaders right now, Domantas Sabonis, Nikola Jokic. The Balkans are putting it up.
As we, confront our priors, Waz, I'm coming to the the revelation on this podcast as I'm leaning through all these either ors. Like, do I pick J-Dub or Şengün? Do I pick, in this case, like if I was gonna pick a king, I think I would pick Domantas Sabonis over De'Aaron Fox.
Never, ever, ever.
I think I would.
My life is Domantas Sabonis going on my All-Star ballot over De'Aaron Fox. You must be out your monkey ass mind, Rob Mahoney. He's are crazy.
He's quite good. He's quite
no
important.
Shot.
I think he's
for one of these bigs, man, to be getting my considerate, we're giving y'all 5 spots already for the damn All-Star game.
Yeah.
Okay? 5 slots. Excuse me.
6.
6 slots for the All-Star team.
Yeah.
Relax. You're good. It's a bonus. Fall back. You don't dictate the movement of what's going on in Sacramento, man.
I actually disagree. He dictates a lot of the movement of what's going on in Sacramento.
Sets good screens. I'll say that.
Yeah,
one of the league's best screen
on
setters.
the offense. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets overlooked. I don't think it's a particularly great Sabonis season, though.
It's been okay. It's always confusing because he's always going to be very efficient. He's always going to reflect very well in a lot of the big bucket 1-number metrics in ways that are hard to just look straight past. Again, I think it would be a bit of a coin toss between Fox or Sabonis for me if I was going to pick a king.
Wow.
Even with their recent success, I don't see a lot of I don't feel particularly moved to pick a king.
No. And he is, if you want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, probably holding them back his defensive issues from ever getting to the upper echelon again.
Are you saying the quiet part out loud, Verrier?
we should say it quite loud.
Why isn't Sacramento taking off? Why isn't it happening for Sacramento? Is it because they start a center with the reach of a 6'8" guy?
He does have some T-Rex arms, that's for sure.
Is it? Maybe. I don't know.
Could be.
Maybe. Could be. Who
but
knows?
Netflix told me he's like a dutiful husband.
He is a
with
sweet
kids
guy. I would love to be. I'm
Laker
sure
girl.
he's a great guy to grab a beer with. He seems like a sweet guy. I'm sure I would absolutely love finding him delightful and love him as a dude for sure. But
IPA guy?
goddamn.
You
Wouldn't
think?
be
IPA
surprised.
guy?
I think we're typecasting him because of the beard. But I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
One guy we mentioned earlier who maybe we should talk about a little bit more is Devin Booker. Just because one of the most accomplished players, one of the highest scoring players to not make it. And I'm going to be honest, for me, I didn't feel super torn about leaving him off or even kind of not having him in the next up group. What I want to confront is I'm not trying to punish Devin Booker for not living up to his own standards. I want to take this season on its own for what it is, his performance on its own for what it is. I'm trying not to be weighed down by how good Devin Booker has been, but I just don't think he's been that exceptional this season. Still good, still Devin Booker, just not exceptional.
He's probably on the Fox tier where he's on that level as a scorer, does a little bit of everything. The efficiency isn't particularly compelling this year. And then the Suns have just been awful. It's at a certain point, you cannot reward one of the 5 worst teams in the West and one of the worst teams in basketball, if we're going by thirds, with 2 guys. You get 1 and you're capped. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. The 11th seed. Sorry, guys.
Anybody else that we're not considering? Maybe Bryce Sensabaugh? From Utah Jazz.
I took a quick look at Desmond Bane just to knock on the case, check if it was watertight. He's just not on the level of these other guys.
Is he still making the leap? I was told he was going to make the leap 7 seasons ago.
He made the leap last year with the added burden and all of that.
Okay.
He's quite good.
Still not an all-star.
Well, I think
you know what, man. What I respect.
I think he's solid.
Yeah.
What I respect about Bane is that his role has been greatly diminished this year, and he's not bitching about it.
Yeah.
He's just doing what he has to do. And I think it's making this team so much more dangerous because of it. So shout to him for that.
He's a good player.
Yeah. He has one of those really scalable games where, in a season like last year, you can ratchet up his usage. He can do more. He can create more. You pull him back into this role, and not only will he not bitch about it, the efficiency is going to go back up through the roof. And he's just such a good shooter and such a good presence for them in movement. It's like the case for Bane, if there was one, is team success plus that kind of efficiency. It gets drowned out when you're talking about De'Aaron Fox and Devin Booker and this caliber of player. I just don't think he's quite in that group.
I think that's what I'm saying. I think it was a cool column topic 3 years ago. It's Desmond Bane, future All-Star. It's I don't think that's gonna happen. Actually,
we need cool column topics. Don't poo-poo them.
No, we definitely do need that. I would agree. Can we still go back to Wemby just quickly because we kind of breezed past that? Well, two things actually with Jokic. It was funny. We were doing one of those top 100 meetings yesterday, and two of our participants were like, "Oh, SGA is the MVP," and I was like, what world am I living in? This civilized society where there's this free exchange of different ideas. I was like, no. Where are we?
I gotta respect the narrative case because SGA is he is the clear cut number 2, and it's closer than it's been all season right now. But if we're just doing it on nerdy empirical data.
Is the reality nerdy?
Sure.
Is the day-to-day existence of our lives nerdy?
I do think feelings and telling the story and, this narrative thrust behind what OKC's doing and their number 1 seed and the group post-game interviews. And I think that stuff comes into play. But if we're just looking objectively, Jokic is still the MVP. But goddamn, SGA is damn close. Come on.
I didn't think we'd ever get to a day where Nikola Jokic would be averaging 30 a game, but we're here.
Yeah,
almost 31.
And by the way, a lot of that is Russell Westbrook. Believe it or not,
Russ has been so good. I have to tell you,
he's been so good. Russ is my favorite player in the NBA right now. I've never been much of a Russ guy. I was always kind of somewhere in the middle, obviously fun, electric, really dynamic player, but he openly would bark at media members, and I was just that's kind of mean.
Yeah, not nice.
But you think he's mean?
Oh, he's definitely he's way meaner than me.
I'm saying, I'm just there's levels to this shit.
The media.
I mean silently. I simmer. He barks.
That's
he bites
true.
Your head
Very
off.
different kinds.
But watching Jokic breathe life back into this guy is one of the best stories we've had in years. And so, even if you look at the empirical stuff, which, first of all, Jokic is better statistically than he's ever been. And so I agree with you guys, shockingly, that Jokic's case is far and away better than Shea's. But just the fact that he called his shot on Russ when nobody, it seemed would want to do that, and then was right about it. And not only that, Russ might be their second best player this year. Maybe not in the broader sense, but based on the results of this year, Russ is probably their second most important player.
When Jokic is on the floor, their second best player has been Russ.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. There's still some Russ minutes where it's what are you doing out there? Sure. But it doesn't matter. I also say, to Russ's defense, his whole thing was always oh, they don't know how to use me. And that's bullshit for a lot of reasons. But he's kind of right, because to bring out the best in Russ, you kind of need to play through the mistakes. And that was the case when he was MVP Russ in Oklahoma City. You need him to throw a bunch of dumb passes to get the brilliant one that you never saw, or to just play so goddamn hard that he's willing to almost do the mistakes with all the brilliant stuff. And so it's been great. I love watching him.
I want to say this in defense of Russ, too, who... It's very hard for players who are that entrenched in a signature style of play to dramatically shift it and to become more of an off-ball threat, more of a cutter, get the ball out of their hands and become someone completely different from not only who they were, but what made them so wildly successful in the first place. If there was going to be a place to do it, it's with Nikola Jokic. And that's not just because he's a great passer, but specifically because he's a big. The difference in James Harden and Russ trying to make it work together, and Harden trying to dime up Russ running pick and roll or cutting, is so different than Jokic looking over the top of the defense from the elbow and just whipping no looks over his head. The dynamics work in Russ's favor in a way that makes total sense, and that clearly suits Nikola too. Their pairing has been electric, and I can't wait to see what they do with it the rest of the year. I can't wait to see what it could mean for the Nuggets as we approach the trade deadline, now that they know they have one more kind of solid piece of the rotation.
And Murray's showing some damn spunk
Damn straight.
finally.
Sure.
My God, Jesus, he's showing it though.
One thing I will say, though, in James Harden's defense there, is it did feel like they recontextualized Russ in a way that the Nuggets are now taking advantage of, where he's like more of an off-ball cutter who's basically your center on the floor. Like maybe that's more of a Morey thing than a Harden thing, but that kind of is the blueprint that Jokic is now just making better, frankly.
You can see the like 4 or 5 year trajectory for Russ of starting to become that kind of player, and I think quite crucially being humbled a couple times by really destructive, disappointing circumstances, like situations that just did not work. And it became really clear very, very quickly that he can't fill this kind of role. He can't fill that kind of role. So you look around the landscape of the league and what is the situation that makes sense for us? It's clearly this. This is the kind of thing that could play very well for him.
We didn't know that he was basically just good Ben Simmons all along.
For you, is it Ben Simmons good Ben Simmons, Justin?
Depends on the night.
Yeah.
It really depends. Last thing I just want to mention here, because we didn't really talk much about Wembanyama. We didn't pass pods, though, but he's up to 4 blocks a game at this point. So there's been 15 instances in which a player has logged a season of 4 blocks or more. Do you remember the most recent one?
I don't think Gobert ever got there.
Was
he
it the
did
Dwight
not.
Howard?
Nope. It was in the 90s.
Wow. Okay.
Mutombo.
95,
Mutombo.
96. 30 years, practically, since we've seen this.
95, 96. Is that Atlanta for him?
I think so.
What I loved last night, Homer-ass Spurs broadcasters were complaining when Wemby wasn't getting credited with a block. They were like, that should have been the 8th block.
Hit 8 in the first half.
If you whip the air strongly enough that it alters the trajectory of the ball, maybe it should be a block, corporeal blocks.
Mutombo was in Denver that year. Next year.
It was a Denver year.
He was in Atlanta.
One thing about
go ahead.
On the Wemby front too, I think he's starting to make a case for himself. We were just talking about this with the top 100, Justin. Clearly elevating his class within the league, jumping a tier into now he's kind of firmly a top 10 player, not really threatening. Yeah, not necessarily threatening the Jokic, Shea, Luka, Giannis kind of class just yet. Tatum class kind of yet included. But I think he's making a case as having the single biggest impact of any player in the league. And I don't mean he's the best player. What I mean is what he does is so singular and so irreplaceable.
The Spurs just should not be this competitive.
They
man.
shouldn't.
Like, they got Chris Paul at 50 running point.
And quite successfully.
Yes, and a bunch of dudes who, they're shooting it with confidence because teams feel like they can't leave Wemby with the lob threat. Like, the second they leave this guy on the pick and roll, it's whenever I, pick up something and throw it in my trash can, that's what it looks like when Wemby's catching a lob. It's just the most easiest, effortless, nothing really happened. What he's doing with his, sort of setup game where he just knows where guys are going to be and is spraying it out quickly. That thing is just picking up on a game by game basis. And last night, what I thought was cool was Zach Edey clearly circled the date on this calendar. He came out 3 quick buckets. One of them, he dunked it on Wemby's head. I was like, oh shit, Zach Edey. 2 things happened. One, Zach Edey was tired as fuck afterwards, exerting himself that way on 3 straight possessions. And the second thing that happened was Wemby just made adjustments. He made adjustments on how he was positioning, when he would decide to try to block, when he would decide to try to strip, when he would actually seed the position. He just was making the adjustments on the fly. And his teammates are noticing it and giving him the props. That's the thing that I think is the dopest thing about Wemby. Yes, the freaking 28-foot threes. Everybody gets excited about that. These little things about getting off of the ball quickly and making defensive adjustments. All the winning things that doesn't get you girls, Wemby is excellent at. Excellent. And he's picking this shit up all the time. That's what I think is the most impressive to me, man.
How much of the Ja Morant All-Star case was minted when he absolutely yammed on Victor Wembanyama.
Oh, at
last
least
night.
40%.
I was about to say. I feel like he wasn't on your page, and then that dunk happened. It's like, oh, he's one of the backups.
Yeah, Ja Morant is a revelation, y'all. Just telling y'all, man. Keep an eye on
Speaking
the
of
Grizzlies.
things that get you girls, I have to shout out Ryan West, who was the guy at Bellwether Bar the other night who helped your brother out.
You heard from him?
Ryan West. Oh, and also my guy at the MGM bar did reach out to me. I gotta go find him on Insta.
We're just doing shout outs to a guy
Yeah,
at a
that's
bar.
the shout out portion. What the hell? My boy Matthew. Matthew from Denver. We appreciate the shout, appreciate the love, man. Shouts to my Denver faithful out there.
Is that a TTHEW or a
TT, two T's.
HIEU? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Two T's, my
Or
boy.
maybe an O, like a Louisiana. I noticed you guys didn't have Scoot Henderson on your short list. Is that just you
No.
just want to get into it right now? There's not enough time.
Well, nor Denny Avdia. I know that must have been a tough cut for you.
Then he's good. Best player on the Blazers. I'm just saying. All right, why don't we wrap it right there? Thank you to Ben Cruz on production. Off on Monday. Back next Thursday with your East All-Stars and hopefully some takes. We'll talk to you then.